All right. Are we ready to go, Audrey, more or less?
Yeah, it's 7:02. I'm sure we'll
Okay.
keep getting
Well,
people, but
will be coming in. We've got 42 now, so. Well, good evening, everyone. Welcome to the first 2024 meeting of the Phoenix chapter of the IEEE Computer Society, a very august organization, in my humble opinion. I'm the chair of that group. I'm Jerry Crow, the chair of that chapter. Our group meets 6 times a year on the second Wednesday of the even-numbered months. Now, of course, this is the third Wednesday, but last Wednesday was devoted to lovers and hearts and things, and so we decided to have it tonight instead of on Valentine's Day. Okay, I live in Scottsdale, Arizona, a suburb of the Phoenix metropolitan area. So I'm sitting at my desk in Scottsdale. Audrey's in Scottsdale as well. Our vice chair, Audrey, is our secretary and webmaster and our all things Zoom person. Our vice chair, Brad Morant's registered. We'll see if he makes it. He lives in a house in Israel now, and so it's 4 a.m. in the morning over there. So whether he signs up, whether he gets on or not, we'll see. Oh, now, Audrey is hosting the Zoom meeting, and she'll be controlling the meeting. We have 100 people registered for tonight's meeting, and that's by far the largest audience that we have ever had. Pre-pandemic, we would meet in person at the local campus of DeVry University, and the largest crowd we had there was 170 one night when we had Halbert Gale, who's on the faculty at the University of Nevada, Las Vegas, and who I've known for years and wrote columns for, ACM and communications and everything. He came down as a distinguished speaker and gave us a presentation. So, okay. Now, people are all muted, and please do not unmute. Save your questions till the end. We will, in fact, when Eileen's done, she can say, are there any questions? And then we can start asking questions. Speaking of that, now the only way we're going to be able to have questions is for you to use for those of you who are new to Zoom, use the raise hand option down at the bottom of the screen. You'll see I don't have a raise hand, Audrey. Where is it? Interesting. Well, there's supposed to be a raise hand option, and I'm not seeing it. So something's weird about this particular meeting, but here's the problem.
I think it says reactions. You see the smiley face where it says reactions?
Oh, it's in reactions?
Yeah.
Yes, it is. It's in reactions. Thank you very much, Kit.
You're welcome.
Okay. Yeah, it's I use Zoom a lot, but mostly as a participant. Yeah, if you click on reactions down below your screen, you'll see a raise hand option. I'm going to do it, and then Audrey can cancel me out. But the point of that is, if you raise hand, it'll bring up a hand up here, and we'll know that you want to, and just thank you. We'll know that you want to ask a question. The reason we do that is because with 100 participants, we can't possibly see all of you on the screen at one time. We only see about 20, 25. So if you raise your hand visually with a camera, we'll never, odds are we won't be able to see it. So use the reactions, raise hand. Thanks again, Kit, to show your hand and ask questions after Eileen says she's done. Okay, is there anything else? No. Well, yes, our presenter tonight is Ilene Klein. She was a fixture in the Phoenix cybersecurity universe for many years. Now, she no longer lives here, and we miss her. But tonight, using contemporary technology, she's going to enlighten us with stuff about misinformation, which she's an expert on, and she does a lot of contemporary research in that area. And so at that point, I'm going to stop talking and hand it over to Audrey so she can talk a little bit more about any Zoom items that need to be, housekeeping, and give you a little more about Ilene, and then Ilene can take it away. You're up, Audrey.
Okay. I think we've covered all the housekeeping issues. I just say that Ilene has been working, and you can see it online. She's an information security specialist at TD Bank. She coordinates incident response and internal crisis communications. When I've worked with her here in Arizona, She was doing a lot of outreach and education and coordination among entities, sharing security information, raising awareness, threat intelligence, vulnerability frameworks, just really in touch with everything, including working with the Fusion Center. And we're really excited to have her. And Ilene, take it away. I know everybody wants to hear you instead of me.
Actually, I want to thank you. Thanks to everybody for, well, first the information, the invitation, and for attending tonight. So let's get going. I like the title of this, The Lies, Damn Lies, and Disinformation, with, again, apologies to Mark Twain for stealing his and bastardizing his quote. Here is my official disclaimer. All content represents my own personal views, not those of current or past companies or entities with whom I've worked. We'll talk about, I'll give you a brief introduction. We'll go over some definitions, then go over the anatomy of a disinformation campaign, talk about disinformation and cybercrime, disinfo and politics, how to recognize disinformation, and I'll finish up with a few resources. Now, I'm making this presentation available. Audrey has it. She has my permission to share it out. So please don't be shy. Every resource, okay, not every resource, but most of the sources are in the notes pages. You'll see links to the sources in there. And what else? Oh, another warning. My presentations are usually very text heavy because I mean for them to serve as a reference later. So yes, it's death by PowerPoint. I admit that. But again, 3 months from now, you'll be able to look at it and actually recreate what was said, as opposed to when somebody gives a presentation and there's a graphic of a cloud and 2 words, and you have no clue what the presentation's about. All right, so am I even qualified to talk to you? Audrey gave a little hint, but I've been in the industry. I've worked in cybersecurity now for over 25 years. I actually grew up in the industry as it was maturing. I've worked for some very large and actually a couple really tiny entities. You should recognize some of those. Since I grew up in the industry as it was maturing, I had the opportunity to build a lot of programs like incident response, threat vulnerability management, all kinds of governance and compliance stuff, security awareness, which is one of my favorites, privacy, threat intel, which is also really fun. This is the obligatory vanity slide. I've earned a whole bunch of certifications. I've won a couple awards. I've been published in a couple of places. So there's that. If anyone wants more information about me, just let me know. So moving on to definitions. Also, if I talk too quickly, unmute yourself and shout out, please, and I will slow down. So definitions, misinformation. That's basic, incorrect, or misleading information. But you turn it into disinformation, that is deliberately deceptive and propagated or shared information. Now, the terms are often used interchangeably. I admit I do that. So I've been working on going, no, it's disinformation, dis. I really like this quote from President Biden, just the first couple lines and the last couple. There is truth and there are lies. Lies told for power and profit. So if you look at the bottom line, we have to defend the truth and defeat the lies. And that's really what it comes down to. Now, there are a bunch of other terms you may hear, like information operations, influence operations, psychological operations, and information warfare. These are generally used in relation to military campaigns, and they basically mean the same thing. Yes, there are some differences between them, but together, it boils down to collecting tactical information about your adversary, disseminating propaganda to get some kind of a competitive advantage. And this does not have to be high tech. It can be very low tech, like dropping leaflets on the enemy population. Make sure that the leaflets are written in the enemy's language. And other things like broadcasting propagation over radio. These were very common during some of the early world wars. Another term that you will probably hear almost daily is fake news. That is false or misleading information that's presented as news. The goals are to damage the reputation of a person or entity, or to make money through advertising revenue. Now, recently, the term fake news has been corrupted a little bit. Now it's also used as a derogatory term for actual truthful news that a person just doesn't like. So the person calls it fake news. And by the way, through the reactions, please let me know if you agree with that and if you know what I'm talking about. You know, part of what I kind of call the ugly truth is also known as the big lie. That if you tell a lie big enough and you keep repeating it, if you are loud, if you are consistent, and you drown out the other voices, people will eventually come to believe it. People think, oh, I've heard that before, so it must be true. So one of the key parts of a disinformation campaign is to amplify the message, which basically means make sure the message is repeated multiple times from multiple sources. And repeated exposure to these implausible statements makes them feel more true, more plausible, more, wow, that could actually be real. Huh, I didn't know that. So I'm going to start believing it. When you think about the overall purpose of disinformation, it's to influence, to disrupt, to corrupt, to usurp decision-making of your adversary or potential adversaries. It's basically to shake the trust in something, like the democratic process and facts, but without actually corrupting or influencing the process itself. This is also known as perception hacking. Oftentimes, the purpose of disinformation is to exacerbate social divisions, get people of different ethnicities to fight each other, to get people of different socioeconomic conditions to fight each other, to get people from different Big Ten colleges to fight each other. So another purpose is to skew the national discourse. So you, again, are fighting with each other. You want to fundamentally disrupt people's ability to make an informed decision for themselves and for their communities. And again, this is usually done for financial or political gain, or both. And it's not just me saying that misinformation and disinformation are bad, or that they're a risk. According to the World Economic Forum in their Global Risks Report for this year, misinformation and disinformation top the chart as the biggest short-term risk that we face. And by the way, extreme weather and the critical change in Earth systems was listed as the top long-term risk. So I'm sure many of you have heard about deep fakes. These are artificial intelligence generated images, audio, or videos showing people doing or saying things that they never did. This type of video manipulation has been done for ages, with varying success in movies or films, if you like it, like de-aging Harrison Ford in the latest Raiders Raiders of the Lost Ark, sorry, in the latest Indiana Jones movie. I have a link on here to a good, fun video about deep fakes, and it's just kind of fun to see Paul Rudd's face on Jimmy Kimmel's body, or not Jimmy Kimmel. Who's the other late night host? Who's not Jimmy Kimmel and not Steve Colbert?
Jimmy Fallon.
Thank you, Jimmy Fallon. So just fun. All right, here is a way oversimplified process of how to create a deep fake. You start with your source image or your video or audio. Add some technology to it through some type of a generator algorithm and large libraries of images, video, or voice clips. Then, combining those, you end up with your fake image, your fake video or audio. Then you run it through more technology, a discriminator algorithm, which refines your image, video, or audio. And you may have a feedback loop to improve it. So you run it through that generator again with more library images. And eventually you end up with something that you want, that you think is convincing for your purposes. So when you're talking about a disinformation campaign, there's an actual process. Define your message, create your deep fake and synthetic media to prove your disinformation. Synthetic meaning fake, so that's your supporting materials. Build social media accounts, because that's what you are going to use to spread them via a troll farm, via trolls, internet trolls, or a bot farm. So a bot is basically a program that will do stuff for you, like post to social media. And a farm, as in these are rooms of connected computers usually, or a network of connected computers that a bot farmer manages. Yeah, an army of automated accounts spreading your message. And then you flood the media and you amplify the message. Global law enforcement entities are constantly trying to take down bot farms. Like Ukraine police took one down in June of 2023. So this is basically a framework for how to analyze some sort of disinformation campaign. And I will tell you at this time, I don't know of any really good technical controls or ways to identify a deep fake. There are some, such as looking at or trying to determine if there's a digital signature, for example, on whatever the material is, if it's a video or something like that. But what you're trying to do when you analyze some sort of a campaign is figure out what are the tactics, techniques, and procedures that the bad guy or perpetrator actually did. And are there any indicators that you can use to identify future campaigns? So look at who the actor is. Who do you think the perpetrator is? Can you figure out whether or not it's a foreign state actor, such as are a lot of these posts coming from a Russian IP address? And yes, I know those IP addresses can be faked or obfuscated. Can you tell what type of behavior is being exhibited? For example, what is the intent of the message? Are they trying to get people to fight with each other? Are they trying to get people to support a specific political person or position? Are they trying to sell something? Are they trying to cheat you out of something? So is financial gain the actual motive? And then what type of content is there? Is it basic video? Is it audio? Does it switch? Is it just a social media post? Does it look deceptive? Is the content sophisticated? If you remember phishing scams, when they first really started, like the 419 Nigerian prince scam, hi, I'm from Nigeria. I'm a prince. I need to move money. Well, those first ones that came out were filled with misspellings. The grammar was really bad. But now a lot of the phishing scams are a whole lot more sophisticated. They look really like they could be legitimate. So when you're examining content, that's the type of thing you're looking for. And then the degree. What is the reach of this campaign? You know, who is the target for it? Is it one specific socioeconomic group? Is it one ethnicity, like I said? Is it one geographic region? And then the effect. Do you think the campaign was effective? Do you see indicators that people are changing their thoughts, their positions, their behaviors? Are you seeing more posts, for example, going, I agree with that? Are you hearing scuttlebutt? I have to tell my aunt about that. So given this, and by the way, this is called the ABCDE framework, which is easy to remember. Again, the whole goal is to figure out how do you identify and analyze a disinformation campaign so that you can do it again and you can compare campaigns and you can figure out the indicators and those tactic techniques and procedures so that you can better identify a campaign and then hopefully figure out ways around it to stop it, to figure out who the actual perpetrator is behind the troll farm, and then share it with law enforcement. All right, deep fakes and cybercrime. Common cybercrime uses: fake videos of celebrities to promote fake products or to promote legitimate products. But since we always want to be like a celebrity, like be like Mike and wear Air Jordans, these videos are really, unfortunately, popular. Fake voicemails from your boss or someone who is purporting to be your boss to get you to wire money or to get gift cards or to share confidential information. In the past, we've called these business email compromises when the threat vector was email. Now they have migrated to voice, and you will see in an upcoming example, they've migrated to video. So this takes phishing up a few steps and makes them much more legitimate sounding. And then there's fake pornography, revenge porn, and sextortion. If you weren't aware, fake porn is when you put somebody's head or face on another body, generally. Revenge is generally when an intimate partner has pictures or video or audio of you that could be considered compromising. And after you break up with your partner, they post it online. And then sextortion, there are two kind of flavors to sextortion. The first one, the classic sextortion, is a hoax type extortion scam, where you get an email that says, hi, I have a picture of you doing really nasty, disgusting personal stuff, and I am going to share it with your mother and your great aunt and your boss, and everybody in your contacts list, unless you pay me a certain amount of money, usually in cryptocurrency. So that's classic sextortion. More recently, it's evolved a bit, aimed mainly at teenagers and young adults. And a perpetrator gets somebody's picture. You know, you get on social media, you do a virtual hookup with somebody, you convince them to share an image of their favorite body part, and then you basically say, unless you give me more pictures, I'm going to share this with everybody. Now, the sad thing is this has had very real life consequences of teenagers committing suicide because of sextortion. If you want to learn more about it, if you have teenagers or young adults in your family or friends, check the FBI website, fbi.gov, do a search for sextortion. They have a lot of resources about that type of taking advantage of teenagers and young adults. There's a relatively new term that I actually hadn't heard of before, and it's called image-based abuse. And this is the term that covers the sharing of these non-consensual sexual images and explicit deep fakes. This type of thing, the revenge porn, the deep fake type porn, started around 2017-ish, and it's grown substantially since then. One of the most recent widely publicized examples was the week of January 22nd, when deepfake porn images of Taylor Swift were posted on X, formerly known as Twitter, and went to other social media sites. One image was viewed around 47 million times before it was taken down, and it took X a few days to take down the images. But even the White House made a comment that it was pretty nasty. All right, any questions so far? And hopefully this is all making sense. Please use a reaction so I can see. Or don't. Kit, you had a question?
I'm really fascinated by this thing about how people can't tell it's not the person. You know,
Oh.
like, is there some kind of a app you can use to look at, I don't know, cameras all have metadata. Isn't there a way to look at metadata and tell whether this is a real thing or a conjured thing?
That's one of the techniques, is to try and find the metadata, but that can likely be spoofed.
Ah,
At least
okay.
I think it can. To be honest, I'm not 100% sure, but if it's electronic, it can be spoofed.
Interesting. Thank you.
Yeah, sure. Okay. So, not a surprise, artificial intelligence enables cybercrime. Oh, I see another question. Go for it. Kid, is that you again? Your hand is still raised. Okay, never mind.
Sorry about that. Sorry.
That's all right. Okay, so what artificial intelligence can do for cybercrime is to basically increase the volume and the speed or velocity of attacks. Bad guys can create more realistic phishing emails. They can create malware much faster now because they are helped by artificial intelligence. Just like ChatGPT can be used to create an article or story, well, artificial intelligence can start creating phishing emails. So AI helps bad guys trick the victims into believing a false narrative through creating fake or misleading content. If you see a picture, naturally you're going to think it's real, legitimate, but it's not always real. I mentioned creating deep fakes impersonating executives and how the business email compromise has migrated to use voice now. Well, that's only going to grow. I mean, imagine getting a voicemail from someone who sounds exactly like your boss, and he's telling you, hi, the W-2 forms are supposed to go out next week, but I need to see them first. Email me the set. You email them, you've just given out released personal information for however many employees you have. Or more likely, hi, I'm your boss. I'm doing a trade, a business deal with this company. I need you to wire funds so the deal goes through. The person sounds like your boss. By the way, for that type of thing, always verify. Verify using a method that he doesn't tell you to use, whatever that voice is. If you have any questions, call me at this number. No, don't call him at that number. Call him at a number or call his assistant at a known good number. All right. Another thing with voice to be aware of is generating voice prints to bypass authentication controls. A lot of banks, for example, use a voice print. When you call into the contact center, they are checking your voice to make sure it matches what they have on file, along with the other authentication information that you have, last 4 digits of your social, your birth date, that type of a thing. It's not generally publicized that they are using your voice to authenticate you, but a lot of the larger institutions do. And then to create a synthetic or fake ID, fake persona to conduct fraud or money laundering. I am aware of a case in Canada, for example, where some people were laundering money for cannabis dispensaries illegally. So you need to have money mules and the infrastructure to do that. And you need those to create the accounts. You need to have those fake IDs. All right, I mentioned how tweets and social media are really powerful. Early this year, somebody accessed the Security and Exchange Commission's social media account. They posted a fake message saying that the SEC had approved an exchange traded funds for Bitcoin. Now, this is something that the crypto industry has been waiting on. Well, Bitcoin value spiked after the tweet. And then after the SEC got control of their social media account again, they posted a retraction. And you can see in the graph how the value of Bitcoin dropped right after they made that announcement. So this is a real world impact. And if you happen to be selling Bitcoin at a certain time, you could have made a lot of money. Another example how a picture, not only worth 1,000 words, but worth some pretty good points on the stock market. Last May, there was a fake image of black smoke billowing from what appeared to be a government building near the Pentagon. And that set off investor fears. And I actually remember this happening. The picture claimed to be an explosion, and it was posted on Facebook. Then it was spread to Twitter and other social media sites. Stocks took a huge hit, absolutely huge. And you can see this in the graph. Again, it shows the power of social media. This could have been used for financial gain, This could have been used just for disinformation to sow distrust in the stock market. I mean, there are lots of reasons to do this. All right, imagine this. You work in finance for a multinational firm, and you attend a video call with the company's chief financial officer and a bunch of staff members. Now, the CFO is based in UK, no biggie. You're in Hong Kong, no biggie. And you get a message from the CFO that it seems like a phishing email because it talks of the need to make a secret transaction. But on the video call, it seems to be supported. That transaction request seems to be supported by the staff and the CFO. So you agree to remit a total of $200 million of Hong Kong dollars, which comes out to about 25 million in US dollars. Well, it turns out that video call that you were on was filled with deep fake recreations of staff. Can you imagine the time it took to make that, first? Second, the creativity to make that. And the technology, of course. But then you look at the payday. That was $25 million that was just scammed from you. So do you think these types of scams are only going to grow as technology improves and gets cheaper? Of course it is. And again, much more harder to detect. Now, it's not just money that people lose to disinformation. They can also lose their lives, literally. So during a health emergency, there are 4 categories of disinformation. There's a mischaracterization of the disease or whatever protective measures are needed. For example, you might see all types of tweets around how masks just deprive your brain of oxygen. I actually remember that one from COVID. You might see the other category about false treatments or medical interventions, like injecting bleach cures COVID. And what was it? Ivermectin will cure COVID. There are all kinds of conspiracy theories that get amplified during a health emergency. You may hear about scapegoating of groups of people. For example, only certain groups get HIV, and it's their fault. And then there are the basic conspiracy theories around the origin of the pathogen, around profiteering, profiteering from the health emergency, or taking advantage of politics around it, or using that health emergency to push a specific political agenda. An example is in 2016, there was a conspiracy that Ebola was planted in the African territory for political purposes. So those are the 4 main categories of disinfo during a health emergency. To follow up, here are some fun facts about vaccine disinformation. There was a study and research paper produced on social media and vaccine hesitancy. So people who don't want to take a vaccine. And they found that foreign disinformation activity was highly statistically and substantially significant in predicting a drop in average vaccine rates. And the disinformation was mainly perpetrated by Russia. What they found was a 15% increase in the number of negative tweets about a vaccination turned into an average of a 2% drop in the annual vaccination coverage rate globally. I thought that was pretty interesting. And speaking of Russia, just a couple weeks ago, the US State Department exposed a Russian campaign to spread disinformation about US and Western health initiatives in Africa. The goal, to undermine US-funded public health projects across Africa, beginning with disinformation regarding an outbreak of a mosquito-borne viral disease. How? The perpetrators spread disinformation using a bunch of branded and unbranded social media accounts, including African Initiative, and I will mispronounce this name, African Kalashnikov. Anyway, forgive the mispronunciation if you know how to pronounce it correctly. But the themes of these campaigns, or this campaign, included conspiracies around Western pharmaceutical corporations, health-focused philanthropic efforts. They're not doing it for you, they're trying to kill you. And of course, around the spread of disease in West and East Africa. Now, no surprise, China's disinformation campaign is in high gear. They have multiple campaigns. One of their main goals is to promote China as a good, benevolent world partner. So they want to silence their critics who vocalize anti-China sentiment. And China wants to reshape the global information environment in its favor. So they have invested a considerable amount of time and energy and money into building a massive disinformation campaign. The source of this was a leading US news agency that did a whole bunch of research of court documents and social media companies' public disclosures. For example, oh, we took down a Chinese bot farm, or we closed a whole bunch of Chinese accounts. One of these campaigns was called Shadow Play. And its purpose was to push pro-China and anti-US narratives, especially around technology. China wanted to win the US-China tech war. So it pushed pro-Chinese company narratives. So it was pro-Huawei, for example, and it was anti-US company. So it was anti-Apple, for example. This was done mainly through YouTube. This campaign had at least 30 YouTube channels with over 4,500 videos with AI generated content. The picture down at the bottom is some stills taken from some of those videos. I say that it was at least 30 because those were the English speaking channels. There were probably many more in different languages. Since the mid-2022, the videos received about 120 million views and 730,000 subscribers, which are pretty huge numbers. Now, the actor behind Shadow Play is thought to be a Mandarin-speaking person. The organization that did the research and found this was the Australian Strategic Policy Institute, and they suggest that the actor might be a commercial entity with nation-state Chinese support, which implies that patriotic companies may be more involved in China-linked campaigns. So yes, nation-states are big players. But I have some good news for you. There is no evidence of foreign election interference in the 2022 US midterm elections. Woohoo! The source of this is the US intelligence community. And this relates to actually, let's say, hacking the election system, our country's election infrastructure, or trying to disrupt voting that way. So from the quote, we have no evidence that any detected activity prevented voting, changed votes, or disrupted the ability to tally votes, or to get the election results in a timely manner. So that's some good news for you. And Audrey mentioned that I worked out of the Arizona Fusion Center for a few years. And I actually worked the 2020 presidential election, among others. And I do have firsthand knowledge that there was no hacking that would have affected the outcome of the election. Nothing substantial. No incidents were reported from any of the fusion centers across the country. Part of my role was to actually monitor that. And I actually wrote up the summary of all the incidents that were reported that went out to all of the fusion centers around the country. So yes, I have firsthand knowledge that there was no evidence reported of any hack type attack that would have affected the elections in 2020. All right, another fun fact around this year's elections. This is the biggest election year in history. Approximately 60 countries plan to hold elections, including the US. In Europe, Finland has a presidential, Iceland has a presidential, the Ukraine has a presidential, even though that's not really Europe, kind of. There's supposedly a presidential election in Russia this year. There are some unscheduled elections that are highly likely due to parliamentary collapse in Ireland, Romania, and the UK. And even a couple other countries have unscheduled but possible elections. So some of the biggest countries, including India, that's not on this slide, is having a presidential election. So it's ripe for interference. It's ripe for influence. It is ripe for disinformation. All right, here's another surprise that hackers are targeting elections. According to FBI Director Christopher Wray, a recent trend showed that there is a 100% increase in hackers targeting of election platforms. Again, their goals not only to alter the outcome, but to sow public mistrust in the electoral process. This comes across as your vote doesn't count. Your vote was switched from your party to who you voted for to the opposition party. And the quote here, as more nation states want to get in the business of trying to interfere or at least influence elections. So the threat is literally unprecedented. All right, so I have to give you another example. 2 days before the New Hampshire primary, Democratic voters in, I think it was, New Hampshire, received a fake robocall that sounded like President Biden, and it told the voters not to vote. So it's estimated that about between 5,000 and 25,000 calls were made, and a snippet of what the robocall said was, voting this Tuesday only enables the Republicans in their quest to elect Donald Trump again. Your vote makes a difference in November, not this Tuesday. Now, imagine if you're a voter, that's like a prime way to disenfranchise you. Oh, And especially, New Hampshire in November, it's probably cold. It's nasty outside. So here's your excuse to stay home and not vote. The calls were linked to 2 companies in Texas, and now a criminal investigation is underway. So again, elections are a target per Intel assessments. I got these conclusions from a private intelligence team that I cannot name, but they assess with high confidence that the upcoming elections will result in a notable increase in disinformation. Artificial intelligence can enhance disinformation through deepfake technologies. Malicious actors are likely to leverage AI to conduct disinformation campaigns related to the elections, which of course we know can have downstream impacts and manipulate election results. The potential impact: erode the trust in the democratic process, impact voter decisions and turnout, and again, further exacerbate polarization of voter opinion and political ideologies. Our favorite nation states, Russia, China, and Iran, are the key players. And again, they hope to shape and disrupt elections in rival countries. And if you think about this logically, we have a democratic system. Those countries do not. So if they can disrupt our democratic process, they can point to us and say, see, democracy doesn't work. Our system of government is better. We are better in every way. And they can use that as even more propaganda or more disinformation. The other thing is they want to put people in power that are going to be more friendly to them. And disinformation campaigns are a major way to do that. So ahead of 2024, ahead of our elections, Russian and Chinese interference networks are building their audiences. And Meta, also parent company of Facebook, realized this. The goal, of course, influence perceptions, make sure that the issues being discussed on social media align with the perpetrator's stated objectives, again, pro-Russia, pro-China, anti-democracy, those types of things. Also, like I mentioned, picking their favorite candidate. How to build and reach an online audience before the significant 2024 elections, which for us, some of the major primaries and the, of course, presidential election. So according to Meta, they took down 2 campaigns originating from China and 1 from Russia. And Meta identified and removed what they called coordinated inauthentic behavior. And when you talk about how to identify these campaigns, think about your behavior at work. You may work or get online between 8 and 6:30 because you work late, weekdays. You may get online on a Saturday, but you don't go online Sunday morning at 3 a.m. And you don't go online or stay online for 24 hours a day, 2 days in a row. So looking for indicators of anomalous behavior, that is one way to not only identify insider risk, but identify what they called inauthentic behavior. Boy, that sounded funny. Let me tell you a story. This is again when I worked at the Fusion Center, and I was part of the National Fusion Center Association's Cyber Intel Network. So I worked with peers and we met weekly to discuss what we were seeing, the bad stuff we were seeing. And one of my peers in Virginia, a state, or excuse me, not a state, but a government entity in Virginia used this application for civil discourse. Basically, you could sign up for the application and then post information to reach your representatives and tell them, for example, how you want the budget to be spent, you know, if there were potholes in your neighborhood, that type of a thing. And my peer found that there were a whole bunch of accounts on that local application for the government entity that either resolved to a Russian email address or came in from a Russian IP address. And again, like I said earlier, I know those can be spoofed, they can be obfuscated, but it was enough that my peer sounded the word across the fusion centers. Government entities in Arizona, where I worked at the time, also used the same application. So we joined forces. We spoke to our peers at the Department of Homeland Security, and we reached out to that app maker to say, you know, you guys really should block requests for accounts coming in from Russia. And, you know, probably China and Iran and North Korea also. And they eventually did. By the way, at the local level, the way the application worked, you could not block it. They had to do it at the company level. So again, these are ways to try and identify bad stuff. Oh, and the good news, even though the accounts were created, they had never been used. But you can just imagine how they were being pre-positioned for disinformation campaigns. All right. Scary story. Disinformation can topple governments. In 2021, Russia ran what looked like to be a wide-ranging disinformation campaign against French-speaking territories in Africa. Their goal was to destabilize Africa's Burkina Faso area and other democratically elected governments on its borders. So what did they do? They implemented pro-Russian fake news sites to populate YouTube. They promoted pro-Russian groups on Facebook and other social media. They used local influencers to organize pro-Russian demonstrations via WhatsApp and Telegram. And of course, they praised Putin. One of the sample memes, and again, this was targeted towards French-speaking African citizens. So one of the sample memes was in French, in 6 months, Putin has cleaned up all the terrorists, while for 50 years under French influence, terrorists had been able to kill 100 people a day. So again, you scare the population, you're spreading this misinformation that France as a governing country is bad, and you should align with Russia. So 3 years later, the result, 5 former French colonies, including the main one targeted, which again, Burkina Faso, were toppled. The new leaders of 2 are overtly pro-Russian. The prime minister of a third was installed after July coup, he met with the Russian ambassador. And in 2 regions, French troops were replaced with Wagner mercenaries. And Wagner is Russia's paramilitary force. At least it used to be. I'm not sure if they still are, to be honest. But disinformation is powerful. Not a surprise, there are disinformation campaigns against Zelensky. Putin's administration ordered a group of Russian political strategists to run them. The goal to exploit what were then rumored tensions between Zelensky and his top Ukrainian general. And again, troll farms were used to generate thousands of social media posts and hundreds of fake articles, and these were circulated across Ukraine and Russia. I mean, Ukraine and Europe. The key theme, Zelensky is hysterical and weak. He fears that he will be pushed aside. Therefore, he's getting rid of the dangerous ones, including the top general. And if I remember correctly, the general was pushed out. So this kind of sums it up, especially when it comes to the political uses of disinformation. That there's been a, quote, terrifying leap forward in the last year because AI has gotten so much better. It's allowing realistic looking fabrications to be rapidly produced. And the fear is that the public will no longer know what to believe. And speaking of that, there is a new video generator tool called Sora. It was developed by OpenAI, the creator of ChatGPT, and Sora allows users to create realistic videos with simple text prompts. So we can generate complex scenes with multiple characters, specific types of motion, and accurate details of the subject and background. Now, there are still some limitations, such as possibly mixing up left and right. There is also new Chinese voice cloning technology called Stream Voice. It was developed by ByteDance, which is the Chinese company behind TikTok, and a Chinese university. Now, it's not publicly available yet. I don't know when it will be, but when it is, or when it does become public, it's going to allow users to instantly convert their voice into a cloned voice using a single utterance of speech of the voice that the users want to imitate. Now, if you remember from how to create a deep fake, you need these libraries of samples. So samples of the voice that you want to recreate. Well, apparently with this technology, Stream Voice, you don't need those large libraries any longer. And excuse me 1 second, I have to cough. All right, sorry. The tool is reportedly fast, very realistic. It does not change the linguistic content of the message, but you can convert into different languages. Right now it covers English, Finnish, German, and Mandarin. And like pretty much all of these tools, it will likely be used by cyber criminals and nation state actors. So what are we doing about all this stuff? Well, the FTC conducted a contest to help tackle voice cloning fraud. It requested submissions, ideas for preventing unauthorized use of voice cloning software. The submissions were due on January 12th, and the winner will receive $25,000. I haven't seen anything since, and I'm very curious about who wins this. But at least the FTC, the Federal Trade Commission, is looking into it. And the Federal Communications Commission on February 8th declared that AI-generated robocalls, or excuse me, the voices in those robocalls are now illegal. That ruling went effective immediately on February 8th. It's based on the Telephone Consumer Protection Act, which basically says junk calls cannot use artificial or pre-recorded voice messages. And this lets the FCC find a company that uses AI in their calls. It can block the service providers that carry those calls. It lets the call recipients, you and me, file lawsuits. And it lets state attorneys general, it gives them something with which they can use to crack down on the violators. So laws always lag behind new technology. Right now, well, as of September 2023, here are the states that have deep fake laws. The yellow ones are the states with laws regulating deep fakes. The icy blue color are states with proposed laws regulating deep fakes. And that pinkish color, those are states with other legal options. Like California and New York, they let people sue the deep fakes, sue the deep fakers, those who perpetrate the deep fakes in civil court. Now, the hard part is 99% of the time, you probably won't know who the perpetrator is. The Federal Trade Commission also recently proposed a new rule on impersonation fraud. So the goal is to prevent the increase in artificial intelligence-driven impersonation fraud. And it basically would it prevents the impersonation of a business or government agency. And it's in response to what they are calling surging complaints around this type of fraud that have resulted in about $339 million since 2019. The downside is there's no timeline really for when this rule is going to be adopted. Right now, it's in a 60-day public comment period, and I'm sure we will hear more about this. But again, at least the government folks are trying. Now, this bill is something I'm really interested in. We talked about the deep fake porn. Well, 4 senators introduced what they call the Defiance Bill. And that stands for Disrupt Explicit Forged Images and Non-Consensual Edits. And yes, you can make all the jokes you want about acronyms. But the purpose is to improve the rights to relief for people who are affected by this non-consensual activity involving intimate digital forgeries. It basically lets victims sue the deepfake creators and, more importantly, the distributors. So I can just imagine the first lawsuit. If this bill passes, I can imagine the first lawsuit against X. Right now, it was recently referred to the Judiciary Committee. I don't know how long it will take to get out of that committee or if it will ever become law. So we've talked a lot about deepfake videos. Let's talk a little bit about how to spot them. And basically, it's in the details. So if you're looking at a video, look for unnatural movements. Does somebody not blink? Do they blink strangely? Is their hair moving when they move their head? Is the hair frizzy? Does the hair look too nice? And do they have weird body movements, like jerky body movements? If you look at the background, for example, are trees blowing in the breeze? Are cars and people passing by? Do those movements look natural? Look for unnatural coloring. Is the skin tone correct? Is the hair color correct? Do they have white teeth or slightly yellow teeth? Is the color of the backgrounds and the objects, do those colors seem reasonable? One of the biggies is look for blurred areas, such as fingers that seem to meld together or blurred backgrounds. Look also for misalignments. Is the head on the neck properly placed? Are the proportions correct? Are arms a little too long and a little too skinny? Are trees and clouds, are they in the right position related to the ground? Do other elements look out of place? And then if there's audio, check for inconsistent noise, halting speech, weird background noises, things like that. And Northwestern U has a very nice quiz on their site to try and spot a deep fake. And this is an interaction time. So I stole this graphic right off the website, off the quiz. It's the very first one. Is this a deep fake or is it a real picture? For those of you who think it's real, please raise your hand. If you can, raise your hand. I don't see anybody raising their hands. If anybody thinks so, if anyone thinks it's a deep fake, actually tell you what, if you think it's a deep fake, applaud. Thank you. Thank you, Andrew. Oh, I see a chat. Look at the left hand. Yes, that is absolutely correct. This is a deep fake. And yeah, if you look at the left hand, the hand that's on the desk, the fingers look melded together. I also think the hair is just a little too perfect. And what looks like a pencil or a pen that she's holding up to her chin, to me, it seems misplaced. It doesn't seem to fit right. But it's her hand that is, to me, the key #1 giveaway. Anyway, have fun with that. Focus on the focus of objects in the foreground. That's good. But that unfortunately could also be the photographic style. But you can tell that the what's probably either a cup or the pen holder, that orange thing on the top left or bottom left, I can't really make out exactly what that is. And it's blurry. The papers that are on the desk up front by the coffee cup, those are blurry. The desk itself is blurry. So those are all good points. All right, now we get into some of the resources of how we fight disinformation. This one is suitable for your grandmother. Civic Nebraska has a very good common sense collection of 20 ways to fight disinformation. These are all very simple. Educate yourself, verify your source, think critically, report it, pause before you share. Don't just blindly share. Snopes is one of my favorite sites. They've been around for a very long time. They are a classic to debunk conspiracy theories, such as, I didn't know that the sinking of the Titanic was orchestrated to kill businessmen who opposed formation of the Federal Reserve. Yeah, that's a conspiracy theory. That is fake. One of my all-time favorites, and if you've heard me speak before, you may have seen me advertise this. CISSP produced a one-page explanation about how nation-state information operations work. It's called The War on Pineapple. And it uses the example, one side says pineapple is bad, has no place on a pizza. The adversary believes pineapple belongs on pizza. Personally, I'm in the pro-pineapple camp, but also I used to live in Hawaii, so it's required by law for me to be in that camp. So this is also suitable for your grandmother, although you may need to explain it to her just a little bit, but it's really, really well done. Allies are working together to try and fight disinformation. I have a bunch of European resources here, but in the US, our State Department almost all of the state attorneys general, the state, the secretaries of state who deal with elections, they all work together to try and fight disinformation. RAND, the RAND Corporation, has a collection of online tools to identify and fight disinfo. I haven't played with this very much, but it just looks really interesting. And I'm looking forward to getting into it more. Then we come to the concept of a kill chain. The basic concept behind a kill chain is a bad guy is going to follow a process when they attack. And there's our cyber kill chains. This happens to be a disinformation kill chain. And the way this is set up, the bad guy goes through the phase of they plan their attack, figure out the strategy, determine the messages, the objectives, identify the target audience, that type of a thing. They prepare for it. So they develop the content, they do more targeting, micro-targeting of their victims or populace. They actually execute it. That's the boom. If this was a bomb, that's your boom. That's when they deliver the payload. So they deliver the content, they deliver the ads, they drive the online and offline activities. And then, like any good process, you assess how well you did and improve. So the whole goal of understanding how a kill chain works, and if you want to defend against it, you want to defend as far to the left before the boom as you can. And that is called left of boom. So if you can disrupt something in the planning stages, that's much better than disrupting something after it executes, obviously. So the hard part is figuring out, like I said earlier in the presentation, what are those tactics, techniques, and procedures? What are those indicators that could let you know somebody is planning? For example, if you're working for a company that for whatever reason, an entity or organization may have issues with, and they want to conduct a disinformation campaign against your company. Do you see indications that somebody is scraping your website for information? Do you see indications of increased attempts to get lists of your employees or your clients? Well, if you can identify those indicators, that could at least give you a hint that something bad could be coming. Just so you're aware, having controls to the right of boom after something has been executed, so at least you can detect it and then fight against it, that is still important. Example, during an election, if you find out that there are social media posts saying that your election, your voting place is closed early, and you see those posts, then at least you can put out social media to counter that. So it's still important to at least detect when bad things are happening, when these disinformation attacks occur. For me as an organization, it's kind of a project. That's where I got that kill chain model from. And this project, again, it's a European project composed of 17 different organizations. And again, the whole purpose is to identify risk factors and then fight against disinformation. If you like reading stuff, the book Information Warfare and Security by Dorothy Denning is a classic. It's old. It's from 1998. She's a professor at, I think it's Georgetown, but seriously, this book is a classic. And just to compare, this one is coming out next week by Barbara McQuaid. I have not read this because it's not out yet. Barbara McQuaid is an attorney. She teaches at one of the Big Ten schools, I think, if I remember correctly. She's also a contributor on MSNBC, if that matters to you. And yes, I will probably get her book and read it because this stuff's interesting. All right, that was a lot. Any questions? And this, again, please raise your hand. By the way, my contact information is here if you are interested. Did I beat you all into submission? Was this worthwhile? Did you learn anything or did you already know everything?
Thank
Feel
you,
free to-
Eileen. Oh, I've disappeared there. Thank you. Always entertaining and informative. Coming back to the, go ahead.
I really learned a lot from this presentation. So I have to tell you, the manner in which you presented the information, the depth that you went to, and the wonderful, crazy stories that we all, don't have enough opportunity to put in a nice package like you did. It was very helpful, and it's an excellent way to learn this information, especially if you are in the middle of having these experiences and you don't know how to classify it. It's really great to have that option. Thank you.
Thanks. I always try, yes, meeting expectations. Yes, I will share the slides. Audrey has them.
I will post them to our website once I get it updated. Give me a couple days and I'll get them up.
Okay. Yeah, and the real or fake image, yeah, that was a strange keyboard. I didn't look at that keyboard that carefully. I was looking at her hand too much. Other questions, other comments, concerns?
I'd like to hear what you say about, working in network security. One of the issues we're looking at is how do you validate people if they're remote and they need an account unlocked, because you can't count on video, you can't count on voice anymore. And it's you have to contact them, but with the SIM card theft as well, it can be a challenge. So how do you recommend attacking that?
I suggest with multi-factor authentication, you need to have some pre-set up, some information that they know, excuse me, and something that they have usually. And I also would say some sort of a biometric, but there was recently a story, and I don't remember where I saw it, about how some hackers, and I think they were Chinese hackers, were stealing facial recognition information. And I'm like, oh, they're doing this so that they can help authenticate people and identify people. So, trying to identify people remotely, obviously that's really hard. And unfortunately, I don't have any good answers other than that. And Thomas, thank you for Barbara McQuaid at the Michigan Law School. Kit, you had your hand is raised.
Hi, I'll lower my hand now. I was just thinking, the other day I had a conversation with someone, maybe for a future talk or just maybe some experience you already have. Years ago, back in the dinosaur age, when I got married, we had to get blood tests, and the local, town kept these records. They probably have some specimens, samples, whatever. But I'm just wondering if people have used these types of sources to get biological data and, identify people long after these records were collected by government agencies for whatever other purpose.
I mean, it wouldn't surprise me. 23andMe has had multiple breaches, and they keep saying that your personal information is secure. But I don't know. I don't trust easily. And personally, I'm always concerned about secondary uses of information. And I will give you an example of that. Let's say you have one of those automatic toll readers attached to your car, so that when you're on a toll road, it automatically says, all right, Ilene was driving here this day, this time, and I have just taken, 35 cents out of her account. Well, what's to say that my divorce attorney, or excuse me, my ex-husband's divorce attorney, doesn't subpoena those records to find out where I was on which day? That's a secondary use of information. So secondary uses of other personal information, I mean, you can still get a lot of stuff with a subpoena. Jerry, thank you for Dorothy Denning. I really thought she taught at Georgetown.
Perhaps her husband, Peter, is also notable in the security and IT universe. And I think,
Okay.
I don't know where he is.
All right. And again, I could obviously be very wrong. George, I see you have your hand raised.
Yes, thank you very much. It was a very interesting presentation. I have
Thanks.
a question about when you were discussing the election interference.
Mhm.
So I can see how one can prove that something did happen, but proving that something did not happen, it's either very difficult or impossible.
Yeah.
So I'd like to hear your comments on that.
It's the old, what's it worth to buy insurance if you never have to make a claim? Or, as I've always said, the best system administrator is the one whose name you do not know. So proving that something didn't happen is basically you use the same thing that you use to prove that something did, which are log files most of the time. If you are looking at firewall logs, for example, you can see the IP addresses. Again, hopefully they're not obfuscated, and identify which companies are at least scanning your network. And again, during the 2020 elections, yes, we got reports of some unfriendly countries scanning networks of government entities. But that's the type of behavior that happens every single day, not just on election day. Then, of course, you need to look at your access logs. Who got in? If you have VPN logs, who got in? If you, going back to access logs, were there a whole bunch of failures that indicate somebody tried to get in, but it failed multiple times? So to me, that's how I try and prove that negative space, that nothing happened, to justify not only the budget for your security tools and people, but also that things are safeguarded and protected nicely. And if anyone has comments on that, please raise your hand. This is not the Ilene is all knowing, all brilliant, although of course I am, but and did that help?
Yes, thank you.
Other questions, concerns, issues? Going once?
Ilene, this is Audrey. Are you seeing a lot of activity, or can you even speak to it, on the voice AI voice generated voice or video?
Not yet. I have not seen it. I am concerned that it's coming, but I have not seen a lot yet. I know threat intelligence teams who are also concerned that it is coming and are on the lookout for it.
And is business email compromise still the biggest vector?
Oh my God. Yes, business email compromise is still huge. Actually, ransomware is still one of the biggest threats. And if you didn't see, one of the largest players, Lockbit, was recently taken down. Yay! Again, that is a wonderful, wonderful example of international cooperation. Law enforcement agencies from a whole bunch of countries got together to do that. And if you happen to have Lockbit ransomware, well, now your local FBI may actually have access to decryption keys for you. So ransomware still seems to be number one. Business email compromise and phishing, also very, very popular. And Wei Sing, I apologize if I mispronounced your name, but ask away.
Is the Cambridge Analytica or something like that still in action?
I don't know. It's been how many years since that was an issue?
Yeah, that's 2016.
Yeah, I honestly don't know.
What is the subject again, the that?
That was, if I remember correctly, just a major data breach. They had collected a lot of information and it ended up being breached. Am I correct? Is my memory correct?
There's a whole movie, the Big Hack from Netflix, explained that in details. Yeah, it's about the Cambridge Analytica. That company actually is not just like it actually work with those other social media companies. They have those disinformation targeted to individuals. So they get people into those they call it a rabbit hole. So that once they know your preference, they send information, the targeted disinformation to make things happen. It's a very, very powerful model.
Cool. Thank you. And I don't have Netflix, but I'm sure I'll be able to find it somewhere.
Yeah,
and
so
refresh my memory.
So they got sued, and then the company closed closed down, but then they can appear in some other names.
Very, very interesting.
I've read that on the voice thing. I've read that one particular nasty thing is bad actors getting voice content off of the social media of teenagers and then using it to call their parents and act like they've been kidnapped and they're being beaten up or whatever, and I need money, blah, blah, blah.
Yeah, that's kind of an escalation of a really, really popular scam, the grandma scam. Grandma, I was on vacation in Mexico and I was arrested, or I can't pay my hotel bill, wire money to me. And yeah, pretty much any scam that's been conducted via email, it went from email to text. Now it seems to be going from text to voice to appear more legitimate, and again, voice to video to appear even more legitimate. Dave posted to check out the TV series Wild Palms from the 90s. I don't remember that at all. Oh, I was in Germany in the 90s, I think. I don't remember. So if that's on streaming somewhere, that would be a good resource to look at. So thank you, Dave.
Eileen, I assumed I think we assumed everybody knew what a fusion center was, but you might want to just speak to that quickly.
Fusion Center is a place. These first they were established after 9/11 because after the attack on the U.S., different law enforcement and intelligence organizations had different pieces of intelligence about the impending attack, but there was nobody to put the information together to get a single picture, to fuse that information together. So Department of Homeland Security established at least one fusion center for every state, and they bring together different law enforcement agencies, federal partners, sometimes critical infrastructure partners will even contribute. And there's fire is generally there, other first responders. The whole purpose is to share information. So, for example, special events like the Super Bowl that was in Arizona and in other states. Special events like in Arizona, John McCain's funeral, where a lot of VIPs came to town. Special events like elections. Everybody comes together to share information, and there are generally task forces set up to prepare for this event. I had partners with not only police officers, you know, your general have gun, will travel with the physical security focus, but also police who had a cyber focus, white collar crime focus, intelligence folks from Department of Homeland Security, from the CIA. Just really cool atmosphere, really nice atmosphere to share information. And I can speak that Arizona, there's a group of folks who monitor social media. There's a group of folks who do computer forensics. And by the way, there's also an emotional support dog who works out of the Fusion Center. And the dog is also capable, at least when I was there, she was also a electronic sniffing dog. So she could find a USB device, for example. But she was mainly our emotional support, especially for the forensics guys, because they tended to see images that were upsetting. So again, concept of fusion, bring people from different disciplines together to share information in one place. And I mentioned there's a network of all of the fusion centers have a network, so you share information with different fusion centers, and cyber has its own group also among that. Did that help?
Yes, thank you. I also wanted to ask, do you have any advice for people who have a very public facing persona, people who are on video a lot, like elected officials, CEOs, to protect themselves since they're kind of prime targets?
Yeah. You have to be very careful with your digital footprint. You have to be very, very careful of any incoming emails or texts, any incoming communications. It's funny, just so you know, I'm not promoting a specific company, but as an example, there's a company called Cyber WA, and they offer digital personal protection for folks who are public facing mainly, celebrities, CEOs, that type. And they actually do monitoring for bad stuff. And they also will go through and help clean up to make sure that your digital footprint is as small as it can possibly be. And again, for those with a public persona, I strongly, strongly suggest keep all your public stuff with one account that is separate from every other account. So it's not your work account, it's not your personal account. You may even want to keep it on a separate device. For example, you only access it from a certain laptop. That way, if the laptop gets corrupted or infected with some sort of malware, it doesn't affect your personal stuff because you're definitely a target. The other thing is to set up alerts, or if you are in this type of a position for a company, make sure that your internal folks, whoever they may be, set up alerts like with Google and social media, that if your name is mentioned, they are notified. And in many companies, the folks who do that are in the corporate affairs or public affairs group. Yeah, that's pretty much it. And again, if anyone has other ideas, please post them or speak up.
One thing that you can do is Google the term digital exhaust. That is the global name for what you leave laying around when you go online. And believe me, you will, most people, including me, you have no idea how much is left laying around when you visit places. So,
Yeah.
but I attended a presentation where the guy actually had spreadsheets of things to do. I mean, check this, check that, to reduce your digital exhaust. So that's the term if you Google digital exhaust. So
Thanks, Jerry. That's cool. Other questions?
Do you remember Alta Vista? We're all old enough to remember the
Yeah.
first search engine.
I do. I don't
Somebody
remember
told me
using
about
it.
that, and they said, you know, you ought to put your name in there. Now we're talking the mid to late 90s here, okay, 30 years ago, 40, okay, or 30 anyway. And I said, oh, come on, I don't have any online presence, there can't be anything. So the guy ran my name and he came up with about 25 or 30 hits, including pictures that had been taken at a conference where they captured them with the people in the picture. So I was blown away, and I was about, you know, like I said, that was in 1998 or something like that.
That's actually pretty cool. Every so often I do Google myself, and I rarely come up on the first page because there are other Ilene Kleins. But if you add my name plus the term security, that's when I'm going to come up as very high in the search results. And I don't use social media. If you try and contact me on LinkedIn to friend me or connect, unless I know who you are, or we have a lot, and I do mean a lot, of shared connections, I will not accept it. Oh, my picture's not on there either. And I'm usually 1 to 2 jobs behind my current job. I think I may still be listed that I'm in Phoenix. Oh,
Well,
and by the way, I am in Crystal River, Florida, which is the home of the manatees. So,
well, Ilene, thank you very much. I always appreciate it. I'm grateful that you stepped in and did this presentation.
and again, thank you all for the invitation, your attention, your interaction. Have a wonderful, wonderful evening.
Yes, and I'll add my thanks in there too. Ilene, thanks to you for doing this and taking time out of your schedule to do it for us. Thanks to Kit for helping organize the East Coast stuff. Like I said, we've never had a meeting this big, so thank you. But maybe as we continue to use V-Tools to announce our meetings, that'll help. So
Thank you for welcoming us, East Coast people. It's starting to get late. I think
I was
some of
gonna
us
say,
might be
it's
falling
pushing
asleep.
pushing midnight back. And when we go on daylight time, which Arizona does not do, so
Yeah.
if we have a meeting in June, you're gonna be 3 hours ahead of us. So
Yeah.
All right, I'm going to stop the recording and wish everybody a good night.
good
Excellent.
night.
All right.
Good night. Good
Good
night.
night.
Bye,
Night.
guys.
Thanks, Ilene.